Well, then there were 4 Matt Toomua, the quarterfinals done and dusted, all won by the home side. But I'll tell you what, there's only one Australian team left surviving. And of course, the Brumbies, if anyone is surprised by that, they're staring down the barrel of some serious history. No Australian side has gone across the ditch to New Zealand and taken down a New Zealand opponent in a final from 17 attempts. The Brumbies, can they do it? They'll be up against the Blues on Friday evening. But before we get there, let's talk about the quarterfinals. Are you surprised? Is anyone surprised by what happened on the weekend?
No, look, I don't think anyone is. The only surprising thing was that I actually got 4 from 4 on my multi. So I'm pretty happy about that. Cheeky little $40 goes a long way these days. But look, yeah, fair argument, to say that maybe we should only skip to a 2-week finals series in Super Rugby. But hey, more rugby. I'm not complaining, that's for sure. So yeah, look, Brumbies. They were good. They were good on the weekend. A little scare for a moment, but yeah. Look, I think they're a chance in Auckland.
Well, with only the 4 games of Super Rugby finals, we probably didn't need as many of your coffee shots from 2 before 10 to get through all of that. But you've spent a bit more time roasting.
Yeah. So I learned how to roast last week. Very, very beginning stages. Very much doing my apprenticeship on an academy contract, if you will. But enjoying it. I went through about 23 batches today, which took a decent amount of time. But yeah, 2 before 10. Go and see it. Yeah, it's been good fun.
Wow, I'm looking forward to getting back to Oz. Currently recording here in London, and I'm looking forward to getting back and having some of that Australian coffee because you do miss it, don't you?
Yeah, you definitely do. Yeah, I've been in Japan for so long. So actually, the first thing I was looking forward to was my coffee machine. I was filthy because my sister didn't bring it over, but I've got a U-Butte machine that I'm enjoying. I've actually bought 10 liters of milk and food dye, so I can practice my latte art. So I do that every night. So yeah, it's good fun. I actually got an email 2 weeks ago from the Wallabies. I was like, oh shit, yeah, I'm being picked again. How good? And they were asking if I can if I can supply them with coffee beans when they're on tour and stuff. I was like, oh yeah, whatever. But yeah, no, it's so we're going global, mate. We're going interstate, maybe global after that.
That's hilarious. And so I imagine you said very quickly, absolutely. You'll probably come in to camp as well, maybe get another strip or who knows, but we know how essential coffee is when you're away on tour.
It's very essential. One of my business partners actually did make the quip that Rugby Australia are going to pay their bills. So that's maybe something we had to check in. But no, look, it's awesome. Yeah, really excited. So if I can't get on the field, I'll try and caffeine the boys up so they're ready for a big test series coming ahead.
Who was predominantly your coffee partner on tour? Who would you, when you're going away and you're away for 4 or 5 weeks, do you generally go with the same contingent of guys, or would you mix it up every morning for your breakfast coffee?
Yeah, I'd mix it up. I was quite. So Rory Murphy at the Brumbies, him and I actually ended up buying a cafe after we were done. After he was done, so him and I were early days with doing it. I was a little bit of a lone ranger at times. I would just go and search things. David Pocock always enjoyed a good brew. But yeah, I was a little bit of a snob, maybe why I suit the cafe scene. But I used to just go off and go on Bean Hunter or as things went on Instagram and try and find some really cool cafes and yeah. So I wish I had better stories, but I was very much a lone ranger at times.
All right, let's get back to the here and the now. As much as I'd love to find out a bit more about your coffee snobbiness, we'll start on Friday night. Were you surprised? 25 minutes in, 28-0. The Chiefs just came out full of steam. They looked like that runner-up side last year who took out the minor premiership. They brought something that we hadn't seen in some time, and they really hit Queensland for 6. They had no answers early on, did they?
Yeah, look, I was surprised actually. The Reds was probably the one game I thought that there might be an upset potentially. Pretty interested by the Chiefs. You think about it, they've come close a couple of times, often against the Crusaders in the final, their bogey team. And they started the season really, really well as well. If I think you think a few rounds into Super Rugby, you thought, all right, this Chiefs team could be their year, and then they've just kind of, they've still been top four, but they haven't kind of set the world on fire. And then almost now it just seems like, you know what, there was a statement of intent, like it's finals footy now, and we know that, it's not the English Premier League. You don't get a trophy for being on top of the ladder at the end of the round robin. It's all about finals, and I reckon that could be quite interesting, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if they cause an upset in Wellington this week. That being said, that the home ground advantage is probably something that they be disappointed they don't have for semi-finals, because it is very, very hard to win a final away from home. But yeah, huge game from them. They really just blew them off the park, blew the Reds off the park, and it was quite difficult from then on.
I think we just saw man for man, them being faster, stronger, hitting harder, their precision at the breakdown. I think probably Sony Tokio's best game. He's probably been a bit quieter throughout the year, but we saw him and just his desire to get to the ball in front of the Ryan Smith. That probably kind of summed up to me the difference in the two sides. Tokyo, complete eyes on the ball. He was going to get there first. And then just the precision of their back line, like Nanai Satura. We spoke about him last week, and I think I put him in what my Super Rugby team of the year would be. But hey, Narrow quality, Sean Stevenson, how good was that break? His ability to put the ball on the toe, everything they were doing was coming off. And you hope it isn't kind of looking forward to Bledisloe matchups and so forth later in the year. It's a little bit of an insight about what's to come, I think, because that side against a Queensland team with several Wallabies are going to be there. Really, like, it was a concerning defeat. I think if you're Joe Schmidt, just going, how did that transpire?
Yeah, look, I think mentally it clearly was a step up for the Chiefs. They had a lot to prove. It can be a bit concerning that our second best team got dusted by their third best team. But look, that might be getting a little bit too analytical for it. Look, the Chiefs just had a huge lift in intensity. It clearly meant a lot to them. This is a team with some battle scars from the last few years. This is a team that came out, as I said, like it's 2 seasons. They've finished the round robin. Now it's all about finals, and you could really, really, really see that. And look, good. I think the Reds have had a really positive year. I think if you look back on it, they probably instill a lot of people with some optimism going forward. It would have been great if they had a better performance in this match, but they'll look back in the end. There's some big games. The fact that they consistently beat New Zealand teams. They had a few blips over in Perth, and look, I think they'll be a better team for it.
Yeah, and they're well coached, and I think Les Kear's first year, you often can't quite, you get on that journey and you can't quite achieve everything in one season, one campaign, particularly for a World Cup campaign, which is long, and you don't get some of those stars back until later on. Sam Cordingley, the GM, will be working behind the scenes. I think they did a great job getting guys like Jeffrey Tumunga on there. Now they've got to get someone like a Lukan Salakai-Lotu, who I think is heading back to the Reds, but they've got to ensure that I think they just get that bit more physicality in that edge in the second row and that tight fire to be able to, when you go across the ditch to play a New Zealand side in a final, you can match them physically. Yeah, are they the sorts of guys you're looking at to go, yeah, they would be able to add something to a Queensland team?
Oh, definitely. I think Lukan would Lukan or many of the guys from the Rebels would be adding a lot of depth to a lot of teams. I think One thing I've always noticed with Australian teams is that we really do struggle in the last 20. This game's probably not the best example of that, but we really do struggle in the last 20 against Kiwi teams, and often it's coaches or pundits will be like, oh, it's we're not fit enough, blah blah blah. It's often because our benches have been emptied, and we just have a significant drop in quality of players in that last 20 minutes. So you think Kiwis will bring on 7 battle-hardened NPC rugby players, and we often bring on 7 guys who maybe just that it's a little bit too much of a step up. So it's very rarely a fitness issue at this level. These guys are well conditioned, very strong lads. It's just it's pure quality, and I think a silver lining of the Rebels not existing anymore is the fact that maybe we'll get some increased depth in a lot of our Aussie teams. In particular, we should see that last 20 minutes really just start to level out a bit more for our teams, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. No, Harry Wilson, you could see a big matchup like that. He was the difference against the Chiefs earlier in the season, and you see without him what you miss out on, the heart and soul of that side. And John Bryant's got a promising, really exciting career ahead of him, but it was probably just one step too far for them, I think, at this early time in Les Kiss's kind of journey with the Reds.
Yeah, and I think, like I've said it before on the pod, but he's just the emotional leader of that team. I think, sure, he'll have some barnstorming carries. He'll do some cool little offloads or pop up in cool places, but you can see he's just the emotional leader of that team, and guys thrive off it. And he brings a lot of energy to guys, and so I think his absence is not just purely kind of stats, 14 carries or 2 line breaks or whatever, but just the emotional temperament of the team is lifted when he's there. And look, I actually read an article last week, I think it's from some Kiwis, saying how they're really surprised he hasn't had more caps, Wallaby caps. And I think when you start earning praises of teams like countries like New Zealand, you probably know that he's got something good going on.
I absolutely agree with you there. I'm interested in your thoughts, Matt, around guys like Ryan Smith, Liam Wright. Does a match like that harm their test aspirations, or would you like the full season's body of work to outweigh perhaps the fact that the Reds were beaten up and bullied in certain aspects throughout the game?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting answer because it does matter. Those kind of games do matter because they do mean more. And in the same way, a test match means more than a round 1 match, in Super Rugby. Some games just mean a little bit more, and the ability to kind of have that capacity to increase your level is important. That being said, these guys have had consistent seasons all along. I think it's probably, these games are probably where you start looking at guys who are very, very good super players, but maybe not cracked it completely at the international level. These games where there's lift intensity, when there's just more on the line. And look, that by no means means I think particularly someone like Ryan Smith, Liam Wright's already proved he can play internationally, but this will just add to their careers. By no means is it, throw him out, he's no good at this level. It's very much about developing and learning how do players adjust mentally to bigger games. I know personally, my first finals series, we had a final in Hamilton actually, and I was massively deer in headlights that game. I couldn't. I was just looking around. I was just awestruck by kind of the occasion and the moment, and probably didn't have my best game then, but it just adds to your career. You know what I mean? So next time there's a big game, I start putting systems and processes in. How do I, calm my nerves, lower the anxiety, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's just all this is. It's just another step in their journey.
So we saw Damien McKenzie just be able to show his absolute class. Attack really led the side around well. I think we'll see Tom Liner in this wider squad at the very least. The trained-on squad guys are being added all the time. Did we learn more around Tom Liner on the weekend?
It's an interesting one. I think Joe Schmidt will really like his temperament. You think, as I said, I think Joe Schmidt is a little bit more conservative coaching wise than say some of our Aussie coaches in the past, where Aussies where we don't mind a punt. Whereas I get the feeling that he will. I get the feeling that Joe Schmidt will be looking for his 10 to execute, to play the numbers, to kind of play that game of chess, and Tom Liner's got that. I still, I don't think he's been the best fly half from an Australian perspective, but I think those attributes will serve him well for a coach like a Joe Schmidt. The big question mark for me about Tom Liner is size. He does get brushed off a bit in defence. Noah was that way a few years ago as well. He really struggled physically. I think of last year in Eden Park, Noah really struggled physically once again in these big matches, and I think that'll be something that needs to be worked through with a guy like Tom Liner. But look, he's been great. He's had a great season. I think he'll look back on it very positively, and I think he would very much deserve to be in a wider squad for sure.
All right, let's park the Reds for a moment and talk about the Rebels. Their last game in Super Rugby, unless there's some extraordinary turn of events with the court matter, perhaps likely over the coming days. But there wouldn't be any. I can't imagine the Rebels, they're making a comeback anytime soon. 47-20. An outstanding first half, though. They were right in the contest.
Yeah, definitely. It was, it showed that it meant a lot to the Rebels. There was a fair bit of emotion in that game for obvious reasons. And look, it's a brave team. It's a team with a lot of character, and they did really well. Ultimately, you can be brave and all that. The Hurricanes are just a better team, and I think it just had that sense of inevitability that the Hurricanes would maybe run away with it in the end, and which they did. But look, it's been a extremely frustrating season for the Rebels. As a former Rebel as well, it's been hard to watch for the guys really, battling so many things off the field. So I think they can hold their heads up very high. Like mid part of the season, they'd won all the games that they should have won and really set themselves up. Not the best finish to a year, but I think all things considered, they should be very proud.
As a former Rebel, like, were there many group chats flying around about, it's done and dusted? Did a lot of the guys who previously played for the Rebels watch it? Can you tell us anything about what the former Rebels were saying and give us an insight there?
Yeah, it's tough. No group chats. Very much just individual. When I was in Japan, Nick Phipps wasn't too far away, and he might have been a founding Rebel. As someone who was there for quite a while, you have words with them, and often we're learning things, as other people are learning or as the public are learning. Unfortunately, these days, just with media, when players get told is often when the public gets told. So we're kind of learning as we go, or we're hearing about information as we go as well. So it can be quite difficult. This just, I don't know. It was really hard. It was really sad in many ways. But yeah, as I say, it was quite positive to see the team, achieve the finals, which was their stated aim right from the beginning. And for them to do that, considering the circumstances, is remarkable.
Yeah, I completely agree. And well done to Kevin Foote for being able to keep the side together. They probably just missed it, lacking a bit of accuracy around certain areas of their game. And maybe they felt the absence of guys like Lucan, who had a long-term foot injury, missed half the season. But to be able to get to that first final under what they've had to endure this year, they've got to hold their heads up very high. Rob Leota had some really eye-catching moments defensively. Probably won't want to see Asafa Amua running past him. Geez, he's a wrecking ball who just looks like he's at the peak of his fitness and his powers. And you compare that to Taniela Tupou and you go, guys who, Taniela's probably a year or two older than Asafo, but it's interesting comparing them. Both front rowers, both who are massive bodies, but at the moment, Taniela still doesn't quite look like he's firing on all cylinders, does he?
Yeah, look, and look, if you did this comparison 2 years ago, you'd be saying Taniela's, light years ahead of a guy like an Asafa Almore. I think Taniela, it wasn't his best season, and many things complicated that, injury and what was going on off the field. We obviously spoke at length at an earlier episode about what might be good for him and next steps. But yeah, it's been a difficult year, I think, for Taniela. I'm sure he's been trying his hardest. He clearly, maybe lacked a little bit of that punch or that impetus that he's had in past seasons. But once again, just a step along his journey. I'm sure I hope he'll learn from it. Rob Leota is a really interesting one for me because he's in my Wallabies 23, before the season starts. But I felt watching him this year that he maybe bore the brunt of what was going on off the field. And as someone who, I've been a captain of a team before, and you often wear a lot of the off-field things that are going on. You feel that kind of emotional weight, and I thought maybe he was that way. Like he's a guy who he's an admirable leader, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's it's been quite a difficult season. I think Joe Schmidt will be. I'm really interested to see how Joe Schmidt goes with his selection with a lot of the Rebels players, because you've got a lot of guys like Taniela, even a Carter Gordon, who maybe didn't play as well as we expected them to, but considering the circumstances, I wouldn't be surprised if Joe Schmidt goes. I know their potential, and I think I can get more out of them at an international level than maybe they did at a super level, considering what the guys had to battle through. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of currency in the bank there for a few guys.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Can you tell me, living down in Melbourne, playing for the Rebels, can you at times just be out of sight, out of mind a little bit?
Yeah. So I came over from Leicester Tigers as well when I went to the Rebels, and so there was very much a at Leicester, you're a big team, and then you get to Melbourne, and you're kind of singing for your supper a little bit, and there's very much a side plot with the Rebels. You're playing, but then the side plot's often, we're trying to grow the game, we're trying to improve, we're trying to get more people to the ground or get a foothold in such a congested sporting market, and that can be quite difficult. And I think that often derails from the performances. I've always said that I think Melbourne have brilliant marketing department. The way they sell the game, the way they sell the team, the culture, and all that, it's ahead of other teams like the Brumbies, where the Brumbies have all been about performance. But it's difficult because you've got a lot of competing forces. You need one to help the other, and you need the game to be popular down there for the on-field performances to do well. And I feel when you've got these, when the priority is often to grow the game, you're probably not going to perform as well as other teams like the Brumbies or like Leicester Tigers or whatever, who can just focus on performance, and that's their job. So difficult one. Lots of people have tried down there and haven't done too well in the past, and maybe there's some bigger things at play that are a bit difficult to overcome.
Yeah, it's a good point. The amount of stars that have ended up in Melbourne that haven't necessarily enhanced their reputations, and I think of James O'Connor didn't necessarily have a happy experience down there. Danny Cipriani, Kurtley Beale, Quade Cooper, guys come in and they pretty quickly go as well. So it does unfortunately bring the curtain down on the Rebels, but congratulations to you for playing there as well. It brings all sorts of questions around. We've already spoken them, but growing the game, can you grow the game by shrinking? We're going to find out some of these answers over the coming years, whether or not it's been a positive decision. We'll find out from a broadcast perspective, perhaps over the next 12 months. What does it mean? Because Nine Entertainment have exclusive negotiation rights for 2024 with Rugby Australia, but ahead of the final campaign in 25, that opens up. But I think if you don't hear any news around a broadcast negotiation and deal this year, it goes to show, I think, that Rugby Australia is not happy with what the offer might be, and therefore hoping for some competitive tension next year with perhaps News Corp or someone else, another player, come into the market. We won't need to talk about the Blues, Fiji. I think we understand that was always going to be a tough one for the Drua to come and try to win their first quarterfinal in Super Rugby, 36-5. Fiji unable to score in the first half, but got over early in the second. But a much closer affair, certainly at halftime, was the Brumbies and the Highlanders. 17-16 they led at halftime after a really late try to Billy Pollard just before going into the main break. It was an intriguing game. I think it played out how we kind of expected it. The Highlanders to target that scrum. They certainly did. It raises questions ahead of their semi-final at Eden Park, whether or not they're going to be able to challenge the Blues. But before we get there, it was a great game, wasn't it? It was the first, and it was probably the only game of the weekend where there was some jeopardy, some competitive tension. We didn't know the result until well into that second half. It was a good quarterfinal, I thought.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, definitely. At halftime, I was starting to get a little bit nervous. Because I was 3 from 4 on my multi at that point. But no, I think you saw the Highlanders kind of have nothing to lose a little bit, and whereas you probably saw the Brumbies with a little bit of nervous tension at the start of the game, knowing that they should win this game, knowing that they're an improved team and understandable. And look, they got the win ultimately, and that's all that kind of matters. Some good performances there. I do actually. I think going into this semi-final in Auckland against the Blues, I definitely think that the Brumbies are a better team than they were last year. The only issue is I also think the Blues are better than they were last year as well. So it is going to be difficult, particularly the way I think the weather will play a huge part. It's often a little bit greasy, a little bit wet. I dare say the groundsmen won't be spraying anything on the field this year at this time. As you just mentioned, that the scrum is a huge Achilles heel at the moment. I thought maybe being a finals game that the Brumbies might have an improved performance, but unfortunately it wasn't the case. And it was kind of, a big part of why the Highlanders were still in that with, or at halftime.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Noel Osei, I thought, had another good game. We saw a bit more about him, learnt a bit more, managed to control the game. A nice crossfield kick with the momentum to help Andy Muirhead score his second try. He's just a really good player, isn't he? He's a really good super player. Whether or not he ever gets the opportunity at the international level remains to be seen, but well-liked, takes his chances. He's a good finisher, everything that you want in a winger. I thought Billy Pollard, probably his best game. Found out a bit more about him. I think he'll be in that Wallabies mix, maybe not as a starter or in that 23, but in a wider squad, I can certainly see him come to fruition. That back row, though, how good is it? Charlie Cahill. He's just going from strength to strength. Robbie Ballatini brought the same physicality that we've seen on Friday night with the Chiefs. He would make an All Blacks team, Rob Ballatini. He is a quality player.
Yeah, he's probably one of our guys who you'd say would be, there or thereabouts in a World 15, and rightfully so. He's only improved as well this year. He by no means has rested on his laurels. After a World Cup year, And John Eales, you might think maybe he came back from pre-season a little bit overweight or something, but no, he's really upped his game. And he's another guy who, I spoke about Harry Wilson, he's another guy who means a lot to this Brumbies team, particularly physically. I think teams will be targeting. I think the Blues will very much be looking to target him and hold him up because Valentini runs quite high and does it well. But I think teams like the Blues at Eden Park will be looking to hold him up and stifle his momentum that way. So yeah, but he's been great. Charlie Cowell's been good. I think this will be a really, really interesting game for guys like Charlie Cowell, guys who we've mentioned himself, Luke Reimer, Corey Toole, these guys who are on the fringes, and to be fair, Noah as well. These guys who are in the conversation about the Wallabies chance. Look, it doesn't get much bigger than Eden Park at a semi-final. So I think Noah would definitely want an improved performance on last year's semi-final. I'm sure even Tom Wright would be thinking the same thing. So I reckon there's a lot of guys who will be looking to exercise a few demons from years gone past.
Yeah, so 2022, they lost 20 points to 19 at Eden Park. And last year, they lost another semi-final to the Chiefs. And we saw and we heard Stephen Larkin post-game talk about the fact that this is what the Brumbies do. They make finals, but we can't be a side that just wins a quarterfinal and then finishes their season a week later in a semi-final. I imagine you know exactly what he's talking about from that perspective, the frustration of going close but not close enough. Can you, and I know that you said that the Blues are a better side this year. If you scroll back about a month or two ago, the Blues hammered the Brumbies at Eden Park, 46-7, I think it was, but the Brumbies just didn't take their chances in that first 20 minutes. They have to start the first half this weekend like they started the second half against the Highlanders, take their chances, put some scoreboard pressure on. What are a couple of keys, if you're the Brumbies this week, about how you managed to go over there, break a 10-year drought firstly at Eden Park, but also end a 17-match hoodoo of Australian sides unable to win against New Zealand opposition on New Zealand soil come finals time?
Yeah. Look, you can see Bernie is sick of being the bridesmaid. He wants to be the center of attention. He wants to be the winner. And look, it's an interesting one, Eden Park. It's so difficult there, and it is always a lot more physical than you may think, just because you see the highlights of the Blues or the All Blacks scoring kind of quite flamboyant tries, but it's definitely one up front. I think the Brumbies will be going there with a very smart kicking game. One thing I always, and I was never really able to get the answer to was, it's a game of momentum at Eden Park. Like you can stick it with them for 30, but then as soon as Kiwi teams get an inch, or as soon as they kind of see a glimmer of hope or a little chink in your armor, they don't just score. They score like 3 tries back to back, and then the game's gone. And then so it is really difficult. It would be really interesting to see how guys like Noah and Ryan Lonergan, Tom Wright manage momentum, manage to maybe feel, okay, we're starting to lose it. How do we regain that? It's usually done through decision making, kicking back in your defense, good kicking. You can't kick poorly against Kiwi teams at Eden Park because they will just tear you apart. But yeah, it's a very, very difficult one. Many times I've thought, we're in this game, and then you blink and they're 4 tries up, and then it's just you don't really know what's happened. So yeah, big one for the decision makers, big one for the piggies up front, because that scrum Achilles heel could be very costly.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully James Slipper back. We'll find out more over the next 24, 48 hours about that. But yeah, he'll help. He'll help with the experience. They'll definitely be trying to get the ball in and out. There was a moment in the heavy defeat, and it kind of brought me back, 2 months ago, the 46-7 loss. It brought me back to the 2019 Bledisloe at Eden Park, where the Wallabies had just won in Perth, had all the momentum. And that first 20 minutes was, once again, there was chances. The Wallabies had possession. I think Christian Leilua-Hafano missed a penalty that wasn't too difficult. It was probably 10, 15 metres outside of the left-hand upright. And not being able to take those couple of chances, then exactly what you're talking about. The momentum shifted. The All Blacks managed to flip the script. Kurtley Bill was beaten. Reece Hodge was beaten on the outside. There was just little moments where you go, okay, that's where the game is won and lost immediately, and it just follows the same old script at Eden Park. So I completely agree. They have to win those moments, and especially early on, get some scoreboard pressure. That's probably the crucial thing.
Yeah, it's difficult as well because coaching-wise, coaches don't really coach the emotional side of the game. You know what I mean? Like, you get guys fired up, you want to win the physical battle, but you very much coach in segments. Trust the process and this kind of stuff. And you watch the game in cut up clips on a Monday, and every moment looks as important as the last moment. And whilst that's true for the vast majority of it, it doesn't, a lot of modern day coaching doesn't measure momentum because it's really, really hard to measure momentum. But I think anyone who watches the game in full can feel, what we're talking about. You can feel that you need to stem the flow here. You really need to stop it because they're just going to come on top. And it's not just any other game. It's not just any other team. And it's happened so often. So I think these are only insights you gain after, through experience. And I mentioned Noah and Tom Wright, and I was referencing the game a couple of years ago, but they've had a couple of games at Eden Park where probably haven't been their best games, but I'm sure they've learned something from it, and it'll be really, really good for them, and it'll put them in a good kind of frame of mind and a good mindset for test matches, because it's as close as you get.
Yeah, if I'm Joe Schmidt, I'm of course he's watching this, but this is the game that puts you in the Wallabies 23 if you have a strong performance with the Wales and the Welsh announcing their squad last week. That's first test is only a month away, so a lot to look forward to. Hey, I'm getting on a plane back from London to Sydney this afternoon. I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to getting back to Sydney, having some coffee, but also looking forward to writing a bit more, and also having a mic, and probably not working out of this hotel at the moment. But
how's your foot? Your foot's better?
Foot's good. I can tell you there was a few dancing moves going on at my mate's wedding on the weekend. Perfect. In Bordeaux. The Reds, if anyone gets the chance, send a Millie on. 45 minutes outside of the centre of Bordeaux. That's about as nice as you'll ever get. Great part of the world. Matt, that'll do us. I can't wait for next week. Fingers crossed we're talking about a positive result, perhaps a game-changing result in Australian rugby. If the Brumbies can get it done, they'll have their work cut out for them. But until now, good luck with your roasting of the coffee, and can't wait to do it again this time next week.
Can't wait, mate. Home final in Canberra is what I'm hoping for. I'm here, so I'm ready for it. Chiefs, Brumbies, some payback for 2013. It'll be good.
Wouldn't that be a result? Maybe a coffee cart out the front. I can't imagine you'd be behind that machine, though, with what would be on the line.
I'm strictly 9 to 5, mate. No, it's good. Can't wait.